M.Night Shyamalan doesn't need a whole lot of introduction. With films like The Sixth Sense and Signs, he became one of the premier thriller directors working. The movies after that, they didn't do so well. And the last two, they didn't do well at all. Now he's back with a new secret project called The Visit. We sat down with him at Comic-Con 2015 to talk about the movie and what's coming next. So you're here primarily to talk about your new movie, The Visit, which is a very interesting movie. You kind of you went away in secret, told nobody, made this movie self-financed around $5 million, which is fascinating because your last couple movies were much, much bigger. What made you feel like it was time to kind of just go off the grid and do your own thing?
You know, I guess it was a feeling like I just wanted to concentrate on storytelling. I just wanted to concentrate on the things that make me happy as a filmmaker, in the sense of, like, you know, writing a great script, not thinking about writing a script and saying, how am I going to convince someone else to make it? So, which is already a kind of a weird mindset to be in, you know? You're already not being in the thing. You're saying, this is for me. This is I want to put as much of myself into it. And then, you know, really, you know, saying it's never been about the amount of money that makes a great movie, never, you know, and I want to concentrate on storytelling, how to direct properly, how to storyboard, and if I do all of those things right, somebody will want to buy this movie, and one day maybe I'll be at Comic-Con and show the movie.
Well, you pulled that off, so congrats.
Thank you.
I'm interesting. Like, do you find that smaller scale? Like, and it's a bit of a. You're normally, like, as a director, you're very, very formal in your compositions.
Yes.
It seems like you're a little more loose. Like, were there things about going small, having more fun in this project that intrigued you in particular?
Well, I'm definitely shot-oriented, very carefully, meticulously craft the shots, and that's true for The Visit. They're all very meticulous. Now, it had to look like it wasn't meticulously crafted, which was fun. It was a fun challenge. I love this approach to filmmaking, and it was more pliable. It was more loose, because if I went, you know what, you know, we're not going to do this sofa scene right now. You know, I have this idea. I want to go do that thing again that we did yesterday. I just don't think we got it. Right. You know, there's no process to check with. There's no one, those accountants. We just moved the cameras and we did it. And in fact, I'll give you an example of how pliable it was. I took the budget, which was 30 days, and I said, we're going to shoot it in 27 days. And then I said to everyone, the crew and the cast, everybody, I said, we're coming back in 3 weeks. No one take a frickin' job. We're coming back in 3 weeks, and we're going to do the last 3 days. So it was almost like I was cheating. I felt like, you know, I took a test, saw what I got wrong, and was like, I'm just going to fix this real quick. And that's because it was so pliable and thin and lean, and the, you know, small crew and small cast, and it turned out to just be fun. You know, you were really listening to the characters, really listening to what you were making. So it was a very rewarding process, and hopefully, you know, audiences will sense how much fun I had making the movie, and we'll have an equal amount of fun watching it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you seem reinvigorated between this and Wayward Pines.
Yeah.
You know, after, you know, working on a lot of big movies, which can be exhausting just from like a physical, you know, perspective. One thing I'm curious about, this is a thriller, as Wayward Pines is.
Yes.
Which is kind of like becoming your hallmark.
Yes.
I remember reading a lot of your early scripts in the 90s before The Sixth Sense. You know, stuff that's, you know, like Labor of Love.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
in your first two features.
Yes.
Yeah. Small character pieces that were fantastic and moving. You know, that thread has like continued in your work.
Yes.
But I was just curious. It was. Have you ever felt like you had to always add the thriller layer on top of that? You know.
No, I don't think of
it. You think,
I don't think of it like that. I do definitely know myself now unconsciously. I'm like, I have two sides of me. One's kind of a dark, twisted side, and then the other one's kind of like an emotional family side. And those have always existed, and they've existed from go. As you mentioned, you know, I've wrote and made more dramas and more family-oriented fare before Sixth Sense. And even the year of Sixth Sense, I wrote Stuart Little. So for me, it's always been open. I've always been out of the closet about this, that I've had these two sides, but yet they go, oh no, this is you, you know? And I get, what I also get is, my baseline is more emotional than the general population. I get that, you know, like, you know, I'm very, you know, I'm very moved, I'm ready emotionally to be involved in anything, that stories and things like that. And what I did, I think in Sixth Sense was the first time I kind of took those instincts and kind of gave them balance with other things. So that the emotionality was coming this way, not right at you. And when it comes at you, everybody does that and goes, I'm not going to go there. But if it sneaks up on you, it's powerful. And really, we want to have a cathartic experience. Like that was the balance that I've learned. So I don't feel like I'm not making dramas anymore, So The Visit, for all of its scares and all of its outrageousness and all of its humor, there's a core drama that's going on at the center of it. For me, The Visit's about forgiveness. Who knows if the audience will even know that? But, they'll be screaming their heads off. But
Right.
At the center of it is a drama.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about that emotional accessibility that a lot of people aren't. I think we see that across a lot of movies right now, where there's, where audiences maybe aren't as ready to go and be open emotionally to things. Films have gotten more cynical and darker. And it's rare when something actually even tries to push through that. So I'm glad you're still trying to go and do that thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's important,
Oh, yeah. By the way, it's actually respect what we're talking about. That what you just said, that the audience is saying to me, if you make something too emotional, too soft, right off the bat, if the baseline is that, I'm not with you because that's not my life experience. So I don't find that valid the way you're saying. Now, if I acknowledge their well-deserved cynicism of the world, and I can acknowledge that, and I can come in with that voice and say, I'm with you. I'm gonna speak to you from this angle, and then we together might turn and find something emotional. They'll go there. They'll go there, and I believe they even want to. But again, it's this. You have to acknowledge that we're starting. All of us are starting like this.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So that does factor into your writing process.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, because to some extent, it's the simplest version of it is you have not earned the right to go to that emotional place yet. You just haven't earned it yet. And by earning, I mean you have to acknowledge where people are coming in. That's respect, And then if you can do that, you might sometime in the 2 hours earn your way there.
Right. Well, it's interesting. That's the way to surprise them. It's very similar to how Unbreakable worked for me, where people did not know they liked comic book movies at the time.
Yes.
They like that. They're like, oh, maybe we do. And now everybody likes comic book movies,
Yes.
right? But you had to sneak it in there. It was we're not really doing this thing. Don't look over there, but oh wait,
Yes.
there's a comic book movie
Yes.
at the end of the day, told from a very serious, dramatic perspective.
Yeah, the predominant way to tell comic book movies now is kind of tongue-in-cheek, farcical, kind of keeping it buoyant and entertainment. Saying we're not taking ourselves seriously, we're not taking ourselves seriously, we're not taking ourselves seriously, and that's really entertaining to watch and all that stuff. That wasn't what Unbreakable was for me. That was, always it's taking some premise that's on the verge of unbelievable, which is unbelievable, but I'm going to try to ground it, and make it so that you walk out thinking, is this possible? Is this is what we just saw in The Visit, is that possible? Is Unbreakable possible? That kind of thing. And so the limitations do help with that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So I mentioned Labor of Love earlier. There was an announcement that you're going to be working on that, possibly with
Yes.
Bruce Willis.
Yes.
Is that still happening? Or?
I'm definitely not doing it next. I'm writing a new thriller. The problem is, the problem with Labor of Love is one of 2 screenplays that I've written since puberty that I didn't make. And I want to make Labor of Love badly, but it to some extent, the reason that worked is because it represented a time in my life. I wrote it when I was 22, 23, and I'm burning to write this thing right now that's telling you exactly. The thing I'm writing right now will tell you guys what I'm feeling right now, and the philosophies and the things that I'm thinking about right now. So it feels weird to kind of go, let me just go back in the time portal and pretend I'm 23 again and ignore what's happened over the last 20 years.
Right. Yeah. So how do you go about when you say hey, we want to revisit that? What is that process?
Revisit.
Like if you want to go redo that project, do you kind of sit back and you start to rewrite from square one, or you go from?
No, I wouldn't. That's the struggle. I've almost made that movie three times now, 3 separate times. It's also I'm under the quandary that was prior to the things that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
So the audience is do I not put my name on it? Do I use a different form of my name. These are all the things that if I'm going to make a thing that's basically a flat-out romance, there's nothing scary about it at all. There's nothing thriller about it at all. You know, what to do? That's an interesting challenge at that point.
Well, yeah, it is. And how do you break that down? Because you know your name has weight. You know, based on the films that have come out, and like, there's an expectation. How do you juggle that? You know, between like what you want to do. You know, or like where.
Well, luckily, if it is a box, it's one that I created. You know, it wasn't a book that I found, and I'm like, oh no, now what am I going to do? It is all things that were parts of me that I deeply believe in. My goal is to keep widening and making the box, not necessarily even widening, although that's the case, but making it more customized, the box. I'm happy to live in this box. I created it, but it should really match who I am. So like Unbreakable, though hey, I didn't like it. It wasn't scary. This isn't supposed to be scary, but it's a mystery and a thriller, and I love comic books, you know. And so now the box becomes like, you know, and so you know you keep adding, and The Village and Lady in the Water. These are all wonderful. The box goes.
Right. Do you think audiences have a hard time tracking when their favorite artists and any musicians, filmmakers, whatever, grow and evolve?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I get that. You know, when we think about, I mean, you know, when you think about like one of my favorite authors is my hero is Agatha Christie. You know, she made 80 mysteries, right? And then she used a pseudonym for non-mysteries. I mean, she was very black and white about it, and that just might be the case. You know, that might be the case, and that's the. Fine. You know, if you're an author, it actually is not so bad. You know what I mean? I wonder. I'm thinking about like Stephen King or something like that. You know, an author that we have really strong expectations from, and he's done a good job of keeping the box, you know, more customized for him. You know, like the one about the book about JFK, which I love. Yeah. It's weird. It's not necessarily scary. It's, you know, it's weird and interesting, as was Stand By Me and things like that. So that's important for me to know that that's there as opposed to just the horror elements for him.